the big and major things that we all have in our remit and we all focus on a regular basis, and we know is often a very laborious and difficult process that takes a lot of time, is onboarding. Right? Building a successful onboarding program is not easy. There's a lot of moving parts, a lot of different stakeholders and people go into it, and a lot of different content and things you need to pull together to make it successful and repeatable. So what we're going to do is I'm going to invite someone up to the stage here who has built a fantastic onboarding program at her organisation. I'd like you all to welcome Katie Pariseau, the Director of Learning Development at TrendKite. That's it. Why not? A panel of one. Excellent. So Katie, why don't you just give us a quick intro to yourself and your organisation. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Sure. So my name is Katie Pariseau. I have been in the enablement game for the last 8 years in a dedicated role, starting in sales enablement at AMD and then starting a program from scratch at Spiceworks. And then I've been at TrendKite for the last year building out a program there.
Awesome, thank you. So tell us a bit about TrendKite as an organisation, what the company does, what it was like when you came in, especially in the onboarding space, and what some of the challenges may have been with regards to onboarding.
Yeah, so TrendKite is a startup. We are around 250 employees now, but we are still very much a startup. We are in the PR analytics space, which has only existed for about the last 15 years. Some of the legacy or original companies in that space that you might have heard of are like Meltwater and Cision. And their focus is around monitoring the PR space and giving real metrics for the impact that PR people are having. Because PR is one of those things like sales enablement that everyone knows works, but it's really hard to prove the impact that you're doing. And it's like oxygen in a room. When it's going well, no one's worried about it. It's only when something goes really, really badly and the oxygen is sucked out of the room that everyone starts paying attention to it. And that's very true for enablement as well as PR. So our company is really focused on giving PR professionals the data and the metrics they need to prove their ROI and prove their value in a company, as well as information that they can slice and dice to help them with strategy, to help them with crisis management, to help them be prepared for the unpreparable.
Excellent. Yeah, excellent. Definitely a very dynamic space that TrendKite's in. So tell us more about what the onboarding program or the new hire plan kind of looked like when you joined a year ago.
Yeah, so before I joined, a senior person that was at Spiceworks with me had moved over to TrendKite, and when the product manager at the time was saying that they needed to do more training, she said, you should reach out to Katie, and so she did. We went to lunch. She took 4 pages of notes of all the things that she should do, and was super excited about it, because she's like, this is supposed to be 10% of my job. And I don't know what I'm doing here. And then she reached back out 4 months later and was like, hey, I've done like a third of the things we talked about already, but it's taking 33% of my time, and that's not working for me. So I have them convinced that they should hire someone for this role, and of course I want you to do it. So I came in and talked to them, and she really had executed on like the playbook that we talked about. So going in, she already had identified what the needs were and worked with all the managers to get content made, and made a Google Drive that was customized so that there was a free CRM type of thing, so that people had a portal that they could go to get all this information. So she'd done a ton of the groundwork that I had outlined in our lunch. So coming in, it was like, well, what are the next steps? How are we going to bring this to life? How are we going to make sure that it's repeatable and scalable and measurable? Because at that point, they were increasing their hiring across the board by a ton. So when I joined, we had a little bit over 100 people, and now, a year later, we have 250 people. So I have onboarded over 100 people in a lot of different roles. So she had done it for sales, but then coming in, I've also done it for the MDR side and the account management side, and then the customer success team was already doing this, But their onboarding is very tactical, like this is how you do the job, and it's all very checklist oriented. So for them, I just added in soft skills because they didn't have any soft skills. They didn't know how to run a meeting and have an agenda and have follow-up steps, and like they didn't know how to do crucial conversations and how to react and how to get back to like a common purpose and things like that. So I'm mostly focused on soft skills things for them, but for sales, MDR, and AM, it's the whole thing. It's soft skills plus this is how you do your job, and this is how you optimize yourself for your role, from tools to knowing the industry, knowing the verticals within the industry, because how a PR person at a university who cares about enrollment, driving enrollment and getting more people to want to go to your business school is very different than someone who works for a cosmetic company that's all e-commerce and they're trying to deal with that versus a pharmaceutical company who just quadrupled the price of a cancer drug and is now dealing with a major crisis in the media. So how you approach them and what they actually want from our product is very, very different. So educating them about the industry, the verticals, the use cases, and then how to do their job.
Awesome. So it sounds like that there was a lot of content, there was a lot of information, the framework was there at TrendKite in terms of what needed to be done during onboarding, but just having that in a scalable, repeatable manner was the focus that you had when you first came in.
Right, so some of it we created, but some of it existed, and of the things that existed, I audited it, and it was mostly run by sales managers and senior experts on each team, which we were, at first were hiring people every Monday, and the training programs are at least 2 weeks, so you're like in this constant churn of new people and a lot of scheduling, a lot of content, a lot of time off the floor or away from your phone if we were in account management or CS. So the first thing I did in auditing it, knowing that we needed a tool and that we wanted this to be able to scale as quickly as possible, was to start marking which sessions were lecture-based, where basically the person who was leading it said the same thing 90% plus of the time. It was really just the Q&A where it differed. And which ones were interactive and you really needed to participate in them live, and that was about 60-40. And so those were kind of my low-hanging fruit for let's get those recorded, let's have people do those in the system in the right order, and then let's do live follow-up sessions where we make that interactive. Because in some cases I had sales managers doing an hour-long training and it was just to show people how to do storytelling and what to listen for, and it's all them telling them, and it took a whole hour. And then we recorded that, and then they only spent half an hour doing it, and it was all interactive. It was like, okay, you heard how to do it, now let's put it into practice. And then they could coach on it in the room. And they loved it because they got to actually know the new reps and the new hires better, because they actually interacted with them and saw how they took coaching or how they didn't, and red flags or plus signs in their minds happened there. But it also gave them a ton of time back, and then the time that they were spending on training was something that they saw a lot of value in, and that helped get buy-in for other things that we were trying to do.
Awesome, and that's a really important metric, and that's something that Doug talked about in the panel just before, is understanding what metrics you can use and what metrics you can identify prior to rolling out or implementing a new program, right? And using that as your baseline to determine the ROI. That's the stuff that actually resonates with senior leadership. So having that kind of split 60-40 or 50-50 between the in-person, the virtual training, being able to reduce that for managers is an immediate benefit. So tell us more about the solution, the technologies that you implemented, the way that you kind of structured the training. Maybe take us through in sort of a high level what a new hire program or new hire path looks like for someone who joins TrendKite.
Yeah, so their first day is a lot like how I think it is for most people, where you do like HR and IT and stuff in the morning. I schedule lunch with their managers on the first day because I want to make sure that it happens. If I leave it up to people, I found that it didn't happen all the time because people are busy. So I actually put a recurring meeting on everyone's calendar to block that time in advance so there's no excuses. And then I just delete it if they don't have new hires coming, and that was super helpful. And then I also, later in that week, will schedule lunch to come in so the whole team can eat lunch together so they get to know their peers a little bit deeper. So that's my team building thing, which my HR team thinks I'm babying them too much, but the feedback from the new hires is that it's so helpful because they feel like they're part of the team a lot faster than when I just left it up to the managers, because I have the time to be thoughtful and they don't. We've talked about how hard their jobs are, so if I can enable them to make those connections faster, it only helps the company, and it takes 5 minutes. It's not a lot of effort from my side, and the ROI is very high. So we do that, and then I meet with them right after lunch to walk them through what their training schedule looks like, introduce them to LearnCore, because I've already given them their credentials, usually the Sunday before they start, so that it's right at the top of their email, make sure everyone can log in, and I have the schedule of what everything's going to look like for the next 2 weeks, and I mark everything that's LearnCore in green, and the time frame that I would like them to do it in, but it's up to them. I don't baby them in that sense, that they're not scheduled solid for those 2 weeks of training. Everything that's in LearnCore, which is like 60% of their training, is up to them to get done. And just like we talked about in the panel, how they get paid during their ramp is based on them doing their training. And it's up to them. So I remind them, and they have the reminders in the system, and they have the schedule, but it's up to them to actually get it done. And if they don't, it directly impacts their pay. So it's 66% based on training, and then 33% based on hitting specific goals. So doing so many, getting so many demos, or adding in enough prospecting information, whatever their role is, reaching out to a third of their book if they're in account management. So we have different things for that other 33%, but 66% is based on getting the trainings done, because we want them to invest the time. And also by not scheduling out the stuff that's in LearnCore, it's helpful because it gets that muscle memory of when I have training, I need to go into LearnCore, because ongoing trainings that we do once a week are also, if you miss the live one, I record it, I put it in LearnCore, I send the follow-up email, they all know that it's there. If you attended live, you still go to LearnCore and fill out a survey. It's just 3 questions, it's like Net Promoter style. Was this training helpful on a scale of 1 to 5? Was the presenter helpful on a scale of 1 to 5? And then an open question of how can we make this training better? That's it. You go in there, it takes a minute. If you attended it live. If you didn't, you have it there waiting for you, so you take the session and then give feedback.
Excellent. I think there's a couple of really interesting points there. Firstly, on something that we're hearing a lot more is tying that training completion or involvement to compensation, to an actual monetary thing. To Doug's point before, money talks to salespeople. That's why they're in sales, because they want to make money. So we're hearing that more and more. It's a difficult conversation to have, and difficult to get your organization to the stage where they can say, yes, we are going to look at someone's training involvement and pay them accordingly on that. But if you can get to that stage, then the buy-in and the involvement that you get from the salespeople is autonomous. It becomes, like, as you said, muscle memory. Mm-hmm. They know they need to get into it. The other thing that you mentioned as well that really I think is something that hopefully a lot of people are taking away is the content or the amount of time that you're expecting people to spend in LearnCore is not drastic. We're not asking them to spend 8 hours a day for 5 days for 2 weeks, in LearnCore watching PowerPoint after PowerPoint, video after video. The idea is knowledge reinforcement, and then using pitch IQ and things like that as the evaluation tool to understand how well they're absorbing and applying that knowledge. So outside of LearnCore, you obviously use that as a tool that you currently use for your onboarding program. What other technologies are you employing as part of the new hire program?
Yeah, so the other big technology that we have used besides Salesforce and things like that is call recording tools. And this helps us with coaching on very specific things. So with the call recording tools, we've used TalkIQ as well as Exec Vision if you want specific names, but there's quite a few out there that are good. Gong.io is awesome, depending on what you're trying to do. What?
Chorus.
There's lots out there. It really depends on what you're trying to get out of it as to which one is best for your organization. But what we found is that by having the calls recorded, and open to everyone. Our top sellers aren't getting pulled aside to be like, hey, tell me how you pitched to Ford. Tell me how, like the Starbucks renewal, like that. I heard that was kind of a crazy thing. Tell me how that went. All the calls are in there. Anyone can go listen to them. It's awesome.
Can I ask a quick question
Yes.
about that? Because we haven't looked into that, but prospecting calls, where is there recording ahead of time when someone picks up that says that your call's being recorded?
Yeah, so the question is, when you're doing call recording and call coaching, how you have to tell people that you're recording the calls. And so how do we get around that? So we definitely do. So what we did is we coached and trained everyone on talking about the fact that the call was recorded when they get on. And we also had IT turn on our phone system so that as soon as the phone connects, it says this call is being recorded. So we're covered legally regardless. And then in the meeting invites, we've started to put a line that basically says we record all of our calls, and so when they accept it, so it's in writing, it's on the beginning of the call automatically, and then the rep or AM or CS or whoever is on the call driving it will also mention it, because they can always turn it off if you're uncomfortable with it. So we did have to make sure we had a system that we could turn it off and have a way to like call them back separately so that it wasn't recorded. But that's a very good point. I did work with the lawyers and the sales leadership to find the right balance of us being covered and people being comfortable. Because at first some sales reps especially felt like it was an extra barrier. It's another thing I have to ask at the beginning of the call. And so that's why we turned it on with IT, and that made them feel better. And then when they start the call, they're just like, we gave them a couple like pocket things that they could say. So some of them are more like what you hear at a bank or Wayfair when you call us, like all of our calls are recorded for quality assurance and training purposes, which sounds very corporate, so most of them didn't like that. But what they typically say is, hey, we record all our calls because we want to continue to get better. Do you have a problem with that? And the answer 99% of the time is no. And so it just, the easier you make it on yourself, the more natural it sounds, the more in line it is with your product or the level of conversation you're having, the easier it is. So it's only a problem if you make it a problem for yourself. If you're uncomfortable, they're going to feel that you're uncomfortable. But the other thing with that is having this tool where we just have a ton of calls in there is great, but if you don't go back and listen to them and have self-reflection, you're only getting a part of the value of people getting to learn from each other. So we had the managers take one of their one-on-ones every other week. So we weren't asking them to do one more thing. We took something they were already doing and just made it focused on call coaching. And before that one-on-one, the rep has to send them a call that they've already marked up. They've already put comments in there of, ooh, how could I handle this better, if they just don't know and they need to be coached from the beginning of tell me how to do it. And then the next time if that comes up again, it's like, you know how to do this. Remember we covered this on this call. How do you think you should do it? Versus just telling them over and over again, because that's not coaching. We have them mark them up, oh, I wish I would have said this. So like some of the ones who are a little bit further along, or if they've already been coached on something, are like, I did that thing that we already talked about that I shouldn't do anymore. So this is how I should have handled it. And then the managers will go through and listen to that call and then add additional feedback on it. But if the rep has already looked at it and had that self-reflection, it's a lot easier for the managers to hone in on what they want to focus on and spend that time really coaching, which is super, super helpful. And then again, because everything's open, if someone on a different team or on that same team is having a similar issue, it's like, go listen to these 3 calls in this order, because this is when I told them about the issue, or we talked about the issue. This is when they started to make improvements, and then listen to the 3rd call, which is just a week later, and look how far they came from the first one. And it could be about objection handling, it could be about building rapport, because some of our reps are like all about getting business done and not about building a relationship. So you get to focus and hone in on the thing that particular rep needs help with, because it's not the same across the board, depending on their experience level, their background, who they're talking to, because we have a lot of reps where we really started kind of in the small and medium business space, and now we're winning a lot more in the enterprise space, and that's a very different approach, they have different problems, they have different pain points that we're trying to address, they have a completely different buying cycle and time frame around that. So there's a whole different level of coaching that needs to happen with people who have been super successful for a year or two in our organization and are now starting to hit roadblocks they've never hit before. So they need coaching on things they've never needed coaching on before.
Nice. I like that. It's kind of like a collaboration, crowdsourcing kind of a thing, allowing reps, especially during the onboarding process, to see what good looks like, so they can replicate that behavior in their own words when they actually get past the new hire stage.
And then once we have some of these best-in-class calls or calls around very specific things that we've also done trainings on, I can go back and link those into the LearnCore assignment. So that's super helpful for, okay, now we have this training on how to do it, now go listen to some real calls with the markups, with the comments, and then give them an assignment where it is so that they listen to those with purpose, like 3 questions. So it's usually, what did the rep do really well? What's something that you learned from the call that you didn't know before? And what is something that you might have done a little bit differently and why? And so that way, if you put really great calls or calls where they struggled or whatever, you can get them to listen with purpose and be able to answer those questions regardless of what the content of the call actually is.
Awesome. So let's talk about some of the impacts of rolling out this onboarding program have been. So tell us about, what actual metrics, what improvements you've seen with regards to new hires, ramp up time, sales size, deal cycle, whatever it is, and how you managed to measure those.
Yeah, so as we talked about, this is hard. Also working for a super fast-paced, disruptive startup means that metrics are like ridiculously hard because we don't just change 1 or 2 variables even a month, we're changing like 20 things. So showing causation is very difficult. So it's mostly influence-based. But we have seen that we have had an opportunity to really help with increasing the lifetime value of our customers. So we're a SaaS model, so most of our contracts are a year long. And we have built up our customer base quite quickly, so renewals and upsells are a huge part of our business. So being able to have happy customers that are continuously seeing value as we're rolling out all these new things and having to educate them on all the other ways they can see value in the platform is very, very important to us as a company. And then we have, before I came in, even when Adele, who was our product manager, who was amazing, started everything was live. So if you missed something, if you were on a call, if you were on vacation, you just didn't get that information. So you got what was left over from your peers, or you'd have to hunt her down and then get like the 5-minute version instead of the 30-minute version or hour-long version with all the stuff. And it was on you to go do that. Now, because of having LearnCore, everything's recorded, I'm following up, I'm constantly adding as we get, if it was a competitive update, new kill sheets or new information, like it's all getting added into the same place that they should have muscle memory on where to go when they have questions, which is super helpful. And then I can see who's actually using it and who's not, and tying that directly to how are they doing in the business. So that's very helpful for the managers when someone's struggling and they're like, yeah, but they're really trying hard. I can pull up their stats and LearnCore and be like, are they? Because they didn't attend 3 of the last 4 trainings. We covered 2 new products, which are helping the top sellers blow out their numbers. And they haven't gone in and looked at any of them in LearnCore. So are they really trying? How are they trying? Let's talk about this. And that's been super helpful to just arm them with more information. And take it from an emotional, like, I want this person to succeed, which we all do, but at the end of the day, if they aren't showing us that they want to succeed, how much time and effort are you willing to put into that? And sometimes it's just showing someone that they're not hitting on all cylinders, that bumps them up to realizing, oh, yeah, I can do this. I just needed to be reminded as to what I needed to do. It's also helped us reduce our discounting rates, which is huge. Again, software company, we release new products, new capabilities every single month. So if you aren't trained on those things and you don't know how to sell them and how it adds value, it's really easy to get stuck just selling for the minimum price versus understanding the industries that you're focused on, what their pain points are, and how these new products really do help them tremendously, allows them to sell for a higher rate, which has been super helpful at reducing the discounting. And then the time spent, again, because everything was live, and in-person trainings, led by mostly sales managers or managers in each of the different organizations, being able to have these recorded trainings and on-demand trainings and making them have some accountability as to getting the knowledge on their own and spending the manager's time on the interactive things was super helpful. And we, in the first month of us having this out, so we signed at the beginning of October.
Yep.
But I still had to record all the content and get it all in, and so we had a few people go through, we had a lot of people go through in November, but it was like 25% of the content was in there, and then by the time the December classes started, we had like almost everything that we have today, other than like new stuff that's launched since then. And so that was like our first like full, like 60% of their training was in LearnCore, which was amazing. And December is a tough month because a lot of people are out for like half of it. It didn't impact the training at all because we recorded so much in the order that I put it in. So everyone still got trained fully, and I could show the managers how much time they got back and show sales management how much time they got back. And that was like a very easy, quick win to show them, look, we achieved everything that you guys normally would have spent literally 7 hours more this week doing this. Saved you 7 hours. That's 7 more hours on the floor, doing strategy, pulling analysis, to help your team, coaching, all the things that you say you don't have enough time doing. I literally helped you get this time back.
Direct ROI, and every manager loves getting more time back, as we know. It's the number one objection that we all get from sales managers. Awesome. So that leads us to the end of the case study. Want to open up for any questions for Katie now? Yes.
You mentioned the time course completion to comp for onboarding. I just would like to know how that looks like in a practical sense, and then also, do you continue to do that with ongoing training? Is that the policy? And if not, what are the challenges you see with that? And then also, we're curious about the recording. Are you recording these sessions through LearnCore, or is it outside of LearnCore and then uploading them?
So that was a lot of questions. I'm gonna try to remember all of them, but keep me honest here. So the first question was around how do we tie training and training completions back to how reps are doing. Or is it compensation or how they're doing? Okay, compensation. So for that was all about working with sales leadership and our sales ops team. We knew that we were going to pay them for that period of time, but they are building up their pipeline, so we can't give them compensation the same way as a fully ramped rep. And so we're like, but in order to get them to their full number of their offer, they have to have an opportunity to make that money. And so instead of making that free money for them, we tied it to training. And so through the LearnCore reporting, I can literally pull a report, and for all the in-person trainings, I just have a Slack channel with all of those, because that's our internal communications tool, with all of those leaders to say, did anyone miss any of them? Because some classes are 12 people and some classes are 2 people, and it's pretty easy for them to tell if everyone attended or not because they wait for everyone to be in the room before they get started, unless they've heard from me that someone's not going to make it. So it's really easy. It's 90% pulling a very quick report out of LearnCore, and then 10% is just a quick check in the Slack channel. Did anyone miss anything? Because that's how I say to my sales ops guy, give them 100% of their training number. Oh, wait, and then the second part was, remind me?
Well, do you find though that the sales reps, like in future training, they kind of lose motivation because they're like, I'm not getting paid for these?
Oh, ongoing training. So it helps that one of our core values is around continuous learning. We're in a disruptive space that's constantly changing. Our competitors are constantly changing. Our product is constantly changing with the capabilities. So basically, if anyone says that they don't have time to be trained on something or they don't need to learn about something, from the highest levels of the company, they get smacked down. I don't even have to do this. Even their peers will be like, really? You don't think this is gonna help you sell? Like, they'll even like look up their book of business and be like, you don't need to do this university's persona training? You have 3 universities in your pipeline. You don't wanna be better at selling them? So it's already tied to our culture, which is super helpful. But we do have weekly trainings. Again, having a relationship, a really good working relationship with sales management and the management teams of each of the groups. And I also work with them on what content will be covered in those weekly trainings. So we do it in a Google Doc. It's not the most fancy of solutions, but I basically have one-on-ones with all of the managers every other week, and with sales leadership, customer success leadership, and AM leadership weekly, where we talk about what are the things that are working and not working, what are the things you're focused on, and then I come up with recommended trainings, and then I pitch those to the managers once a week to make sure we're confirmed, and we work 2 or 3 weeks out so we can create any content, get the folks in, and then I have standing trainings with each of the teams on their calendars every week. And so we've just systematized it, and they have skin in the game to tell their teams to go. They have daily stand-ups where they remind people of the trainings. I send out the agenda of what we're going to cover the day before so everyone knows what it is. And that's been super helpful. So even though it's not tied to compensation directly for ongoing training, because I have the buy-in from the sales managers, and a lot of times if someone asks a question, they're like, you just covered that in the training last week, don't you remember? And they hold them accountable if they missed it. Go into LearnCore and take it. 30 minutes. And when I put things in LearnCore, I also put in the title how much time it should take them to finish it. And that's been super helpful for them to go find the time to do something. Because if you are like, oh, yeah, I need to go do that, and you go in and you don't realize when you started that it's an hour-long training, that can mess up your ability to actually plan accordingly. So I'm like, it's a 20-minute training. It's a 30-minute training. It's a 45-minute training. And that makes it a lot easier. I've got a lot of positive feedback that that's really helped people. And I do that for onboarding too, because I'm asking them to find time in their day to get that stuff done.
I think the last question was with the in-person sessions, are you recording those outside the LearnCore and then uploading them?
So yes, I personally record them outside of LearnCore. We have a European team, so I already do a lot of trainings that I have through join.me, which is our screen recording or screen sharing system, and I can just hit record and it's really simple, and then I can just edit it on my end and then upload it. Because of the 2 gigabyte maximum upload, it also helps remind me that I should probably cut it up into smaller pieces, which is helpful for reinforcement training. So instead of it being, oh, it'll take you about 30 minutes, it's like, well, I have 2 15-minute chunks. The first part is all about this. So if you want to know this, all you have to watch is this part. Or 3 5-minute parts or whatever. And so that's really helpful. And then we are all Apple-based, and so there's something that's already on everyone's computers that we use as well. So I haven't had to use any of the tools in LearnCore because we already have those methods. But I definitely want to check those out going forward because I hear y'all have some good integrations / partnerships. Yeah, so I will be looking at that more for sure.
What's your training completion metric?
What is our training completion metric? What do you mean by
have to
that?
take a quiz, or are you measuring how much time?
Yes, so it depends on what we're trying to train on. So it's definitely completing the course at the lowest denominator, but most courses we use the quiz. We usually use the survey instead of a quiz, and it's that net promoter 3 questions that I talked about earlier. And then we use Pitch IQ quite a bit. And that's because for the teams I'm mostly focused on, they're all the ones that are customer facing at different points in the sales cycle and the relationship with the customer. And so knowing something and doing something are very, very different things. And so a quiz or a test doesn't really work for us. I need to hear them do it. And that works for tools, like we just rolled out Outreach.io, and the pitch IQ, after you watch the training that shows you how to get set up and then how to actually do your workflow, is show me you adding a net new account and net new people into a sequence. Why did you pick that? Because they can do voiceover through all of that. So they upload their videos all through LearnCore and using the tools that are in there. So we do a lot of that, and then I have trained, but I always have to retrain managers to get them to go in and grade those things and hold their teams accountable. But again, everything's open, so if the sales leadership wanted to go in and audit a few of each person's and they're giving them all hundreds or 90s and they're terrible, they can hold them accountable as appropriate as well. But I did like that tip of having other people grade them.
That's very good. We got, I think, 1 or 2 more questions.
How are you doing? So it sounds like you have a lot of trainings and content that you're getting in there. How are you getting other people to take time out of their day to create content or have trainings when you determine that there's a need of training?
Okay, so we have a lot of training, so how do I convince people to help me create the training content so that we have the right stuff? So that has a lot to do with the relationships with the subject matter experts and the management teams on all the teams. So we work together to determine what's needed. So I talk to their team members, I talk to them on a regular basis, I talk to their leadership, and we prioritize what those things are, and then my questions are a lot like what the panel talked about in the past session, which are really, what are we trying to accomplish? How are we going to measure what that is? And we agree to that up front. Who's the best person to lead this? So a lot of times I do trainings either in tangent with an expert so that I can help us stay on track. Or it's up to them, but I help them create the content. So again, they have a framework so they can stay on track for what's going to be covered. And then I take attendance and make sure that that happens for live trainings, because again, that holds them accountable. And it also helps when I assign stuff, I know who to really go back and check to make sure that they attended or not, especially people who are on a plan, which is, we're still a relatively small organization, and I'm in all the sales management meetings, so I know who those folks are. And we want people that are on a plan for it to be a plan to succeed. We don't want it to be a plan to manage people out. So with that, I always try to give them a little extra help, support, reach out to them, tell them I'm here if they want to do more one-on-one stuff, or if they want me to connect them to other people in the organization so they can get coached on different things. We want to give them the best chance of being successful, because as was mentioned, they're a hugely valuable asset to the company, and so the more that are successful, it not only helps me in my metrics, but it's better for the company as a whole. It's less change management, it's less moving around. It's a big priority for me.
Awesome. So we want to keep this day going because we want to have a bit of time for you guys to have a break before we get into the next session. So let's give a round of applause to Katie.